Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Batwoman. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously, Kate breaking up what is essentially a chopping organ. Basically, they're taking people's organs and stuff like that, eyes and stuff like that. Luckily, she went all bad. I love, to me, this episode really showcased, obviously you get it from time to time, but it's just one of those real awesome showcases of just oh yeah, what the bats do best. That close quarters, taking down a room of bad guys type of situation is always badass. I even love the whole thing about one of the guys that grabbed her hair, and so Luke was suggesting, I want you to put it in a braid. She's like, I'm not going to put it in a braid. And I even like the fact is that Mary came up with an idea of oh, why don't you basically electrify it and stuff like that. Which even Kate was kind of like, I'm not about to turn myself into an electric, which is once again, I read too much into stuff, but I'm just there's someone that could give you a little lowdown on how to handle something like that. I mean, you're at least aware of at least two superheroes that deal with electricity, the Flash and Black Lightning. So it's but regardless, the fact of the matter is, it's kind of interesting because, Mary's in the know. She's like, hey, team, let's celebrate. But it's but she doesn't get to be kind of in the know about everything. So she's kind of, because she still wants to be a part of the squad, but Kate's kind of pushing her. She's like, no, she has to be, kind of cool about it and everything like that. So obviously they end up, having to visit Tommy because this is all about finding Lucius's journal. And the one person who would know, because obviously Julia and Sophie look through his warehouse, and at least one of his warehouses, and all the stuff that he has, but it's he owns a lot of property, so it'd be the hardest thing to find. So Kate confronts him herself, and he's like, the fact of the matter is, she's like, Bruce hasn't showed up. The fact of the matter is, it's what was it, visiting periods are every 4 days out of the week or whatever, so it's almost have you heard from Bruce, when he's going to show up? He hasn't come to visit his best friend. And it's no, you aren't his best friend, you killed his best friend. And he slams, he's like, that's a lie. How dare you say that Lucius Fox would never be Bruce's best friend? And she's like, that's really all you took from that conversation. So he's trying to play coy about the whole thing, but he's still trying to act all crazy and stuff like that. That's why I'm wondering, is he actually insane? Because it seems like there's a part of him that seems like he has some form of sanity, but at the same time, it does seem like he's also crazy. But that might be because it's all about, his insanity plea, because they'll never actually charge him for Lucius. He can never stand trial for it because he's criminally insane. And lo and behold, who's waiting for him? Obviously Alice and Mouse in disguise. And it becomes a whole conversation about Alice wants the book because it's valued to my sister, so I want it more. And so it's okay, what's the big secret? Why? It's not just Wayne Tech stuff that he's really after. What he's really after is there's stuff in there that can basically, it's a fail-safe to kill the Batsuit. Because once again, this is all about, in case someone else took the Batsuit, they needed to have the fail-safe to make it so that no one, they can immediately destroy it or potentially, end up killing a person inside of it. And it's yeah, but why would, and then I love the big question, why would Lucius have something connected to that? It's because Bruce Wayne is Batman. And then Alice is let's not forget, that's her cousin. It's my cousin is Batman. And she's curious here and curious here, because now it makes probably a lot more sense to her. Now it makes sense why Kate ended up becoming Batwoman. It's interesting. But also it makes you wonder how she feels about that, because I'm sure she might probably blame Batman, much like Kate did, about me and my mom didn't survive. I ended up in the situation I did because Batman didn't do his job. So Joel, I don't know why I said it like that. I said Joel didn't do his job. So I'm wondering, is she going to, because obviously Kate mended how she felt about Batman the moment she found out about Bruce read the journal and everything. But I'm curious, how Beth sees that, not having that, now having the knowledge of it was my cousin who failed to protect me and my mom type of situation. I don't know. Probably won't dive too deep into that, but that would be an interesting thing to see her perspective. Like I said, Kate kind of forgave Bruce because she understood she got a different perspective of Batman did it because he cared, just things didn't go right. He never could figure it out. And now I wonder how would Alice feel about it. But regardless, so now they set in motion this whole plan, they're going to help Tommy escape by giving him a new face, a new identity. They can make it happen. It's got to suck, basically, because of that. They had to fake his death by slicing off his face. And it's just the things you do for a new identity, which I wonder in the grand scheme of things, who identity? I'm assuming maybe they took the identity of the person whose body it is. Whoever's body it is, they slapped his face on to be their sacrificial lamb. But obviously Tommy contacted a friend, Johnny, who's a mobster. And it's yo, I want you got the journal and thing, right? Obviously, Kate and Luke are listening in, so they got to get into it. And I love Kate gets in what she's like, you hear that? And Luke's like, what? He's like, I don't get it. She's like, come on, you know you hear it. And she's dancing a little bit. He's like, we're going. She's like, where are we going? And he's like, we're going club. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, dude, I like moments like that because it shows also like Kate isn't just 100% stoic. She does kind of have like, you know, like from time to time you do get to see that fun side of her. So the fact that she's doing something like this, like, yeah, like the fact is, because a lot of heroes in the, like, especially even the Arrowverse alone aren't like, I'd probably say like the most laid back of the superheroes would be the Legends. They're the ones who could expect some silly fun like that, like maybe some of the Flash cast, but like no one else would kind of do that in the Arrowverse except for like Bill Select. So it's just interesting. And obviously Mary's like, oh my God, this is my time to shine. Here's something that you can wear. It can, you know, it shows the good. You can hide the goods while also showing the goods, you know. And Mary's like, oh, this is what I'm going to wear. She's like, oh, man, if you want to, you can wear it too. She's like, Mary, you're not going. But obviously for her, it's like, but I thought the roster of, you know, Team Bat was full and you're bringing Julia into it. It's like she was literally trained for this. So sorry, Mary. And so Mary's kind of kept on the outs. They infiltrate, you know, the club and everything. And it leads to that conversation I really liked about like, oh, it's like here's Julia texting Sophie and you have Kate being like, oh, what's up with all these burger emojis and stuff like that. It's like, oh, cheeseburgers. And I'm like, oh, that's got to be awkward because she, you know, it's just like the conversation of like, oh man, once again, your exes, you're like, something's going on here. It's like, because she hasn't completely gotten over Sophie. Hell, like her and Sophie were making out not too long ago when she was doing the whole Batwoman thing. But also, and there's a complicated thing of like her and Julia had that like one night stand. It's just like, oh, I was in a bad place. You were there. You kind of helped comfort me. It was that type of situation, but it's still kind of like, oh, you're getting super, super close. Like, oh, where do you have time to like do all this? Aren't y'all working? It's like, we're working all the time. And it's like, yeah, she's stressed out because of her mom and everything. Like, what about her mom? It's like, oh, she came out to her mom. And Kate's like, seriously? Now that's the real big, like, that's a big thing to point out too, because like, that means Sophie confided in Julia and not Kate. That speaks volume. We're talking about someone that was your ex, like someone you were in love with one point in time, and you don't even confide in them about something big like that, because that was a big crux of the relationship, was the fact that Sophie stayed in the closet. You know, it's like, wait, this is a monumental thing of like, you told your mom. And also like, I wouldn't, you know, because Kate would have been there for her. It's like, okay, like it took a lot of courage to do what you did. And like, you know, it's not the easiest thing, but like Kate would have obviously been there for her. So it's like, that speaks volumes. Also shows that, you know, furthers like the fact that her and Julia are definitely getting closer. I mean, I think it's also the thing of like, you and Kate have history, so like rekindling any of that is just harder. Like, it's easier to start fresh with someone. Like, you and Kate have a very complicated history when it comes to that subject. So, but nevertheless, it turns out like obviously the whole thing was a trap. Kate gets caught, Julia gets caught, and obviously Mary wants to step into the fold, but obviously Luke is reluctant because like this whole thing has led to him potentially losing people. Like obviously he lost his dad to this whole situation. He can't bear the thought of losing, you know, because he might be in a position where Julia and Kate might get killed, and he can't have it on his conscience like if Mary ended up dying. But it's like, she's like, I'm the only one who can do this, and it's just like, trust, I know you guys don't think I can do it, but trust me, you know, because I trust you to keep me safe. So she infiltrates and everything, and I thought it was interesting in the long run of like her, like, oh yeah, how she was able to get it. It's like, oh yeah, like I hope, and then like she's like, hey, because she knows Johnny's cousin, and she's like, oh, excuse, like, how do I? And it's like, oh, you know, imagine upside down me holding a bedpan as you vomit, and she's like, Mary, it's like, because she had helped her when she overdosed or something like that. So it's like, yeah, I want to meet with your cousin, and it's just like him and his, and Luke was literally like, don't say mafia buddies, and like she said something along those lines. I'm like, man, I guess obviously this is her first time in the field, she's nervous and everything. It's super awesome. And so she shows up kind of pretending to be representative of Hamilton. You know, we haven't really gotten too much into the ins and outs of what really happens to the company now that her mom's dead. I mean, to be fair, the entire company's name has been besmirched because of the truth about Catherine and everything coming out. I'm curious, like, what that means. Like, we haven't really gone into the ins and outs. So, like, the company must still, like, despite everything, still stand on its own. So, for her to be able to come in there and say, like, oh, yeah, I'm here representing Hamilton and stuff like that. It's just interesting. Like I said, we have never really focused on that too much about, like, what was kind of, like, the aftermath of that whole thing. Maybe they focused on it and it's just been a while and I don't remember, but regardless, it's like, yeah, I'm here for Batwoman. That's a lot of like, you know, we want the tech and we want to study the tech inside. So it's like, yeah, you can have the suit after she's dead. So, but luckily, Mary and Luke had prepared for this, got Kate out, and I thought was pretty badass. The fact is, like, once again, the badass fight ensued, and even at one point, one dude tried to use the grappling hook. She kind of does a matrix dodge, yanks the cord, kicks home dude in the chest. I was like, that'll definitely knock the air out of your lungs. It's like, holy crap. Also, Julia making her escape, because it turns out like Johnny has connections to the agency she previously worked for, but it's like, oh, they said that you went rogue like 6 months ago, so who do you really work for? Luckily, Julia broke free, and what was interesting, she was like, oh, like the lady was like, I promise we won't say anything, and like Julia's like, I know you won't, and then I'm like, she straight up snapped that woman's neck, didn't she? I was like, holy shit. I was like, I don't think Kate would be too fond of that. I mean, it's like you kind of follow different rules and stuff like that, but it's like, yeah, you made her shoot home dude, and then that didn't look like she just hit her over the head. It's like, no, she straight up snapped her neck, right? Like, that's why I kind of rewound it. I was like, did she? And it's like, yeah, it looks like that's her snapping her neck. Interesting. And also, once again, kind of showing you Julia doesn't follow that bat code. Like, that's not the same code that she follows. Which you think is interesting, considering, like, you're you're adjacent, because even she was like, oh, like, I forgot what the term she used, like, when trying to explain it to Mary, like, she's an honorary bat, essentially. And it's like, yeah, because of your family and everything like that. So I just thought it was just kind of interesting. But also, Magpie was sent by Alice to get the book and everything, and she does, but her and Batwoman fight. She tosses the book. I was like, huh, now I'm surprised you gave it up so easy. But to be fair, it's about your freedom and everything. But I'm like, the book is kind of your way to freedom, so how do you get around that? But luckily they got the book. Magpie got away. And obviously, Kate kind of opens up to Mary, and I thought was pretty dope, where it's just kind of like, it's not that I don't trust you, it's just like, the fact of the matter is, I've already lost one sister, I couldn't stand losing another, so she didn't want Mary to get mixed up in all this. But even Mary brought up the point of, like, I've been through so much over the course of this series, and I've still managed to survive and everything, so I can do this, I can handle this. But Kate was like, yeah, the fact is, what you've done this episode shows that you are a badass, that you can handle yourself. So, okay, welcome to the team and everything. And she's like, yay! And she's like, I'll meet you back at the Batcave, and, like, Mary's like, oh my God, that's like the coolest thing that's like the coolest thing anyone has ever said in my entire life. It's like, dude, that's awesome. Then there's the whole, for one, I love her being in the Batcave and she's taking pictures, and Luke's like, what did you do? He's like, no, you literally this is the biggest secret you have to keep in your entire life. Kate's life depends on it. She's like, I totally understand. He's like, I get it. When Bruce showed me this place, he's like, wait, Bruce Wayne is Batman? And then Luke's like, he starts panicking. He's like, oh shit. He's like, man, I messed up. It's like, because immediately, once again, it's just Alice finding it out this episode, and so did Mary. But then I'm like, of course you would kind of feel like that, because it's like, right, because keeping Bruce's secret is separate from keeping Kate's secret, because it's not like a 1-for-1. Like, just because Kate is Batwoman doesn't make you automatically assume Bruce Wayne is Batman. It doesn't work like that. You just be like, because the fact of the matter is, it could just be like, oh, she picked up the mantle. I mean, she kind of separately picked up the mantle herself without really, it wasn't until after, she kind of found out at the same time, obviously, but her taking the mantle was different from like, oh, it's just a family thing. It's like, partially a family thing, but it was also her own thing, So I think that's interesting, because like, to me, I compare it to like, just because you find out Kara is Supergirl doesn't mean that you automatically assume that her cousin Clark Kent is Superman. Like, the fact of the matter is, just because Lena knows because even Lex knows that Kara is Supergirl, but remember during Crisis, he's like, oh, Clark Kent being Superman, he might be that on this Earth, 167, but not on my Earth. See what I mean? So like, no one correlates that together. So it's the exact same situation in this. But Luke kind of messed up in that. I thought that was kind of interesting. Another interesting aspect to this is Regan running into Regan again. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's like, well, I guess it's perfect timing, because you end up kind of shacking up with her and everything. I'm like, well, Sophie and Julia are getting close together, so that's interesting. But then the sucky thing is, like, she wakes up and Regan took the book, and I was like, what the hell was that about? Like, why? I was like, why would she take the book? It's like, that doesn't make any sense. And then we find out she's Magpie's sister, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of complicated sister relationships. It's like, for her, it's like she likes Kate. So it's like, but Kate was a mark from the beginning, but Kate kind of broke things off with her before things really got to that point. Kate inadvertently saved herself essentially without realizing it. But obviously it's like, for Regan, it's like, this is the last thing. Like, she's like, I thought you'd do anything. And it's like, I would. And the fact is, you got this book right now. It's proof that I would do anything for you, and I'm done. this is enough to get your freedom. I want, because like she's basically like, oh, like I kind of paved the way, like I'm the one that kind of gets close to the target and stuff like that. So she's part of the crime and everything. So I'm curious to see how that ends up playing out, because obviously eventually Kate's going to track down Regan, because sadly obviously Regan just thinks like, oh, she's just some rich person, which I mean rich people have associates that can come after you, especially now that it's like, oh, she works with Batwoman, so that kind of sucks. But I guess it kind of works out, because part of me is like, oh, it kind of sucks, like Regan, the whole thing, because like, oh, I guess that leaves literally no room for you and Sophie. Well, it's, oh, I mean, Regan betrayed you. Hey, but Sophie, because I think Sophie's going to, like, it seems like Sophie and Julia are going to get close together, but there's more to that, because we now know, like, oh, Julia isn't into this just to be like, oh, I'm here for, like, no. She's probably known about the journal for a while, and that's what she's coming. I'm assuming like she, like the whole like, oh, she's been a rogue agent for the past 6 months. It's her cover. Like the fact of the matter is either she's working for some other organization, that's why she went rogue and stuff like that, or the whole rogue thing is like her organization, like her agency being like, yeah, this is your cover story so people don't know that you're actually still working for us. Like even the fact is that she snapped that woman's neck makes me think like, well, it has to be like she doesn't want anyone to know that she keeps up the front that she's from her agency, because even the whole thing about like, remember like last episode, it's like, yeah, we're borrowing her from her agency, but it's like they're still under the impression she works with her agency, but she hasn't been with them for like 6 months because she went rogue. So it is in fact another organization that she works for that wants that journal. And it's like, well, why would you give them that journal? You know exactly like what that would mean to Kate. Like, are you willing to betray everything? I mean, once again, this is deep to your family. Your family is heavily tied. You're one of Alfred's kids. I think she's his only one, or did he have others? I don't remember. But the fact of the matter is, you're a Pennyworth, and like you would do that to like that family. That's the thing. Like I'm curious to dive into that. I'm like, I would have never suspected you were up to some shady business like that. But we'll ultimately see. And granted, hey, they end up getting the book and everything, and it's like, hey. And also I skipped over it, but I did like that moment between Alice and Jacob. God, I was blanking on his name for a second. The fact is that they had that whole conversation about like, oh, the fact is you locked me in here. He's like, you did this to yourself. But she's like, actually, it was Kate literally pushing me into the door and you locking the door. She's like, oh, why split hairs? The fact of the matter is, she's like, do you realize what they do to you in here? They shock you thinking it's going to fix you. And then I think she's like, basically you go through it enough, you kind of convince yourself, you try to do whatever you can to convince him like, hey, I am sane, But also it's like, he's like, I am sorry this all happened to you. But for him, she's like, then let me out of it. And he's like, I can't. Because she's like, he's like, you basically kept telling me that Beth is gone. This is a byproduct of that. This is me accepting the fact is my little girl is gone and never coming back, and that you're Alice now, that you'll never be Beth again. Which, despite all that Alice says, there is still bits of Beth in there, still hoping that her family won't give up on her. And now that they have, it hurts. It's a whole thing. Once again, her greatest fear, like her fear on that scarecrow toxin was this. And, ultimately, ironically, almost foreshadowingly, it came true. But nevertheless, but for him, it's like, I need you to stay in here because I need to protect the daughters I have left. But obviously for her, it's like, oh, like I'm going to rain so much revenge on you. Like you won't see it coming. You won't even know what it is, but it's going to be much more better. It's going to be worse than you just locking me in a cage. And I'm like, sadly, probably the truth is it is going to come out that she is going to get free. Probably going to be an effed up situation where she ends up killing him. You just get that inkling like that might be the case. We'll ultimately have to wait and see what ends up happening, what her plan is. But like I was saying, like her and Mouse had the book, but it's all coded. So obviously Lucius isn't going to make it that easy. He got the fail safe in the suit just in case anyone ever stole it. So he did the same thing with his book just in case anyone tried to steal it as well. So I'd probably think the only person that would probably know how to crack it would be Luke. So that might be something we see going forward. Like they might try to take Luke to try and translate it, or maybe I don't know, like who would they turn to in a situation like, I would assume the only villain you could turn to in a case like this would be Riddler, but what's his situation in the show? Like, I mean, obviously we know on Earth 99 he's dead, but what was it? I mean, because remember, Tommy's like, he figured out that Bruce was Batman. He's like, because like someone riddled me this, so implying that the Riddler's the one that figured it out and told him. So it's like, where is Riddler? Because he's good with riddles and codes and stuff. Well, riddles, but I think he could figure out codes as well. So it's like, because it's kind of a riddle in itself. So might be the perfect person for this. I don't know. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where things kind of go, take us with all of this going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy a good day and good